What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another movie review. I'm Chase Lee, reviewing for DallasMovieScreenings.com, and the movie I want to take a look at right now is Bloodshot. Now, this one comes from Columbia Pictures, directed by David S.F. Wilson, and starring Vin Diesel as a soldier that's killed in action, and his body is scooped up by a corporation that's owned by Guy Pearce's character. And when he wakes up, Guy Pearce tells him that he was able to bring him back to life by putting a bunch of biotech microorganisms in his system and all throughout his bloodstream. So he has no blood. It's all these things. So anytime when he gets cut, stabbed, or whatever, wounded in any type of fashion, those things can repair him super easy. He also has super strength. He is indestructible at this point. He is a superhuman. Before he died, he has memories of, when he was a soldier, loving his wife, and this mysterious man that kidnaps him and his wife and kills both of them. So he leaves this corporation to find out where this person is at. So he's got this bloodthirsty vengeance, going for him, and that is what his mission is. And, he's indestructible at this point, so he has nothing to worry about. So that is it for the plot, but I want to go ahead and just stop right there, just in case if you want to go into this blind. I wanted to give you as little as possible, but at least enough so you can decide whether you want to watch this or not. A couple things before I get into this review. One, I had no idea it was based on a comic. The comic line is Valiant. I'm sure if you put up another title or a character or whatever, I could be like, oh yeah, that was adapted, or oh yeah, I've heard of that. But I'm not too familiar with the comic line, but I just wanted to let you know. Second thing is, I thought the trailers were kind of bad. Didn't really appeal to me. I like when Vin Diesel pushes himself out of the Fast and Furious franchise or even the Avengers franchise and does, kind of medium-sized films or smaller films. Like, I want to see him do more stuff like that. And, as long as he keeps trying, I will never fault the man for it. But this just looked like it wasn't going to really do well. Not in terms of, like, the action, but in terms of just like the character, the storyline, it's stuff we've seen before. I just didn't know how it was going to work, so I wasn't really into it. So I saw the movie, and I gotta be honest with you, it's not as bad as I thought it would be, and it's also not as great as I thought it would be. It's fine. It's not a bad piece of entertainment, and if you want to go out to the theaters this weekend and watch something for a couple hours, could be worse, so I'll tell you that. So to start with the actual story and the themes and everything that's kind of going on here, it's stuff we've seen before. This story seems to get recycled every couple of years, and some of them are really great, some of them are kind of mediocre, and some of them are pretty bad. Like, for instance, one of my favorite ones growing up as a kid was the RoboCop movie. Director Paul Verhoeven, one of my favorites he's ever done. And then even a couple years ago with the film Upgrade, directed by Lee Wanell. That was a great kind of retelling of this story of, someone dying and someone rebuilding them, and, they work for their creator, and then they realize that their creator is corrupted, so they turn around and the creator gets killed by their own weapon. And so, yeah, it's stuff we've seen before, playing God, control, power, greed, corruption. It's nothing new when it comes to that front, but it has the comic book edge, so you would figure there would be a little bit more style to this film, and we'll get into the direction in just a second, but that's what this story in particular has the edge over all the rest. But I do think it is a familiar story with familiar beats. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of down the middle for me. So in terms of direction, in terms of overall vision for this film, I think it has some bright spots. It's not all bad. I do think there's some subpar acting going on here. It's really hard for these actors to particularly pull off a really good dramatic scene that has some weight to their character to make us care a little bit more, care about their arc, their journey. It's not all the way there, and there's some cheesy lines for sure, but I can excuse that because this movie is a lot of style over that, and that's just kind of an afterthought. It's serviceable type of character stuff and dialogue. It's not anything to write home about, but this is more of like a visual treat and more of an action film with some decent character stuff in it. That's the best way to describe it. So with the action stuff, I will say this. I think what David does in terms of creating Bloodshot's own brand and own kind of unique storytelling ability, I think there's something there. There are several battle sequences that he overdoes the slow-mo, I will admit that. But there are some shots that are super stylish with the way they're framed, the way they're colored, the way everything is just in contrast with one another, how the action is in still form. Like, it looks like a couple of comic book panels leaping off the screen, and that is something to make this movie stand out. Excuse me. And so there's a couple of times it does that. It's not every time, but there are times where this movie kind of shined through, and I was like, oh man, if you could just do a little bit more of that, or make this look a little cooler, make it a little, just, I don't know, light it differently, like shoot it differently. Like, you could make it look like the rest of the battle sequences, and it could have had a better kind of energy to it, better like world building and just the science fiction root into it. And it definitely could have made for a better experience. But there was definitely some effort thrown into those sequences for sure. On the flip side, though, there were some hand-to-hand combat sequences that were handled with that fast cutting, making sure every shot's like 1 to 2 seconds max, and mid to close-ups. It's really fast stuff. And when you're watching on the big screen, it can become a headache. I saw it on an IMAX screen, and it got a little jarring sometimes. But those hand-to-hand combat sequences are far and few in between, because the rest of the stuff is pretty passable stuff. Speaking of the battle sequences, the final act, the final climax, the final battle, whatever, it had some cool ideas. But this is the first time in a while where I've seen a film use full CGI bodies fighting, and you can definitely tell. They look like little rubber gummies, and you can definitely tell it's not the actor from far away. I just don't understand the decision-making behind that. Some of the shots were cool, and it was a nice little exciting piece within the film, but it's just, or a set piece, it's just didn't really work for me because of the CGI choices that were used. I don't know who made that decision, but it did not look correct. And then, of course, just to judge his overall vision for the film, it's fine. You know, like I said, some of the dramatic stuff was a little hammy. Some of the action sequences were cool. Some of them were a little average, and then some of them were ambitious, but I think just kind of missed the mark. So kind of all over the place, but I think in terms of creating something from start to finish for an hour and 50 minutes, it was not that bad. Let's go into acting. Vin Diesel is a beast. His physicality in this movie is exactly what I would expect. He's walking around. He's indestructible. He's punching things. People are flying into cars. It's great. He sells the physicality of this performance and the strength that this person has. However, every single time when he opened up his mouth and he was shouting about his wife, shouting about how Guy Pearce is controlling him and he wants control of his own life and his own destiny, stuff like that, those type of scenes just do not work because he was not in the right headspace for this character in terms of delivering, this dramatic intensity, this emotional heft. It just wasn't there. There's even a scene where him and his wife, it's just like, I realize that they're married, but I wasn't feeling any type of chemistry because it's just, he does that same thing where it's like the same, like Fast and Furious, like kind of chill, like kind of suave, like, yeah, you're my wife and I love you. That was a terrible impression, but I can never feel it for him. Sometimes it works in movies, just this one it did not. But there's no doubt about the physical performance of this film. It's great. I always like watching him perform action scenes. He's one of the best out there. But in terms of the actual character-based stuff, it's iffy at best, and I just didn't really care for it. The one character I actually did like was Isa Gonzales. She was great. Probably my favorite character. She was the one that actually, had the best arc in terms of what her character was going through and what her kind of control was under Guy Pearce and how she broke through with it. That was the type of character I liked watching. because she performed it very well. Even when little things like when Guy Pearce would control her through, you know, his like wrist or whatever, because that's where his controls were, and she would like stop breathing or stop moving. Like, she sold that, and she was great at doing that. Everyone else is fine. There's a couple people that try to attempt comedy in this movie, and there were 3 penis jokes. They were like the same jokes. It was so weird. They try way too hard with the comedy. And speaking of the comedy, Lamorne Morris. Hold on, we're gonna do this in real time because I want to make sure I get his name right, because this was quite shocking. Lamorne Morris. I apologize. I think that man is pretty funny. I've seen him on New Girl. I've seen him in other movies. The guy has great comedic timing. His comedy in this movie was decent at best, but why on earth did he have an English accent? This man does not have an accent in real life. Why was he portraying one? It just did not sound right coming out of him, and it just didn't sound right. I'm just like, why couldn't he just be himself? His personality would have shined a little bit more. I felt like the accent was holding him back, and it was just really strange. A very strange choice. So I did not care for that. As far as all the other actors, Guy Pearce hamming it up, being the villain that he was just born to be. Kind of remind me of Iron Man 3 a little bit. Probably the best comparison. But yes, to boil down to my final thoughts, I think this is an entertaining movie. I think it definitely is subpar storytelling when it comes to this type of story. The acting is all over the place. There's some bright spots in that. There's some bright spots in the battle sequences, and there's some downfalls with the choices that they made in terms of full CGI bodies, and of course that fast, up close, shaky, fast editing type of style. So this movie's all over the place. It's not as bad as I thought it would be, and it's actually quite enjoyable if you can just kind of get in the right headspace and just be like, hey, I'm in it for the action sequences, and you might have a fun time. I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a C+. I give it the plus just for my own personal taste because I had low expectations. It was a little bit higher, and as I was watching, I was like, this is a C movie, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it that plus because I didn't hate myself watching it. So, and by the way, before I wrap this up, was never a fan of it when I saw it in the trailer, never a fan of it when I saw it in the movie, never a fan when anyone would utter it. Not a fan of the Bloodshot title. Should have been something different. I get why it was called that, given the end part of the film, but still don't like the title. So that's just a little gripe for me personally. But a C+ for me for Bloodshot. You know, go check it out if you want to. But let me know down below what you thought of the film, whether you loved it, whether you hated it. If you want to call me out, call me dumb, you're more than welcome to do that. I leave the comments open and I read them all. So that will do it for this review, guys. I'm Chase Lee, reviewing for DallasMovieScreenings.com. Please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get all up to date on anything I review. And that will do it for this review. And tune in next time for whatever I review next. I will see you guys later.